Okay, so what is phassa? Discussion topic D1A. It is usually translated as contact. But if you use the word contact, it may give a wrong idea that it is linear, because when we talk about contact, it's one thing hitting another. That's why it could give rise to this idea that the image comes into contact with the sense base, and then only consciousness will arise. But actually, phassa is the confluence of all three of them. You see, although the sense consciousness has the ability of being conscious of something, sense consciousness cannot arise by itself without the other two. Even if the sense consciousness is there, but there's no sense object, then also the experience of seeing won't happen. So actually what this means in practical experience is phassa is actually sense experience. It is the experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensing, and cognizing with the mind. The experience of seeing can only happen when all the three components of phassa are there. That means the sense base must be in good working order. Then there is a medium so that the sense object can come into its field of awareness. Then there is a sense consciousness. So all the three of them will come together for the experience of seeing to happen. Without any one of the three components, then seeing won't happen. So it's the same for the others. In the case of the five senses, there is a physical sense base and physical sense objects. But in the case of the mind, the sense base is immaterial, is non-physical, and the sense object could either be physical, it could be any of the objects of the five senses, or it could be non-physical. It could be something like concepts, so ideas, things that are abstract in nature, intangible. So when we are talking about tangibility, we are not only talking about things that we can feel with our body, but we can visibly see, and we can hear, can smell, and taste. Okay? Touching with the body is only one aspect of tangibility. When we talk about tangibility, we are talking about what can be perceived through the five senses. Then in the second discussion topic, the difference between nāma-rūpa in the suttas and then nāma-rūpa as is commonly understood. Well, it seems that it's not as common as I thought it was. It seems that you all have different ideas of what mind means when you talk about mind and matter. But in the commentary, when the word nāma is used, it refers to all the four aggregates, all the four non-physical aggregates, which means feeling, saññā or perception, saṅkhāra and consciousness. Whereas in the context of the law of dependent origination, nāma-rūpa, nāma is defined as feeling, saññā, volition, phassa, and attention. So in the place of consciousness, we have phassa and attention instead. Why is this different? Why does nāma not include consciousness? You see, because this is in the context of the law of dependent origination. If you are familiar with that, you will know that the first link is avijja, the second is saṅkhāra, the third is vijñāna or consciousness, and then after that only nāma-rūpa comes in, followed by salayatana. So there are overlaps, because salayatana are the six sense bases, and they are also part of rūpa. And also there is nāma inside there because the sixth sense is non physical, so there's a mental element involved. Because in the law of dependent origination, vijnana is supposed to be the cause and condition for nāma-rūpa to arise, therefore it is not included in nama, because it's really in the previous link. And that's why in the context of dependent origination, nama refers only to these 5 elements: feeling, sanya, volition, phassa, and attention. Okay? Now, when you talk about rupa, the obvious things about rupa is, of course, the 4 great elements. But then it also says that what is derived from these 4 elements. And what are they? These are sound, smells, tastes, and things that you can see. Color. Color is not earth, it's not water, it's not fire, it's not air. Color is a derivative of these 4 great elements. But actually, when you talk about physics, atomic physics, you say that actually light travels in a particle. You know, you have this particle theory, you have this wave theory, and then you talk about light in terms of photons, which are actually particles, you know, very minute particles of light. So actually they are also physical in nature, even though you cannot touch, but you can see. Whatever that can be perceived through the 5 senses are tangible, and they are all rupa. They are all physical or material in nature, as opposed to what the mind can perceive. As I said earlier, the 6th sense, the mind can perceive things which are physical as well as non-physical. Now the third is about Saṅkhāra in the context of the law of dependent origination. There you can see that it is defined as Kaya Saṅkhāra, Vaci Saṅkhāra, and Citta Saṅkhāra. It's a bodily volitional formation, verbal volitional formation, and mental volitional formation. This needs a bit of explanation. In my previous sutta study with meditation workshops, I've come out with a modern analogy to understand the meaning of citta. Because in the suttas, the citta is not very clearly defined. It is used with varying meanings in different contexts. I try to make use of the concept of citta as found in the Abhidhamma, which is clearer and more defined. So according to the Abhidhamma, the citta means consciousness plus all the other 3 mental aggregates, which means all the 4 mental aggregates. So my analogy is that it's like a glass of water. You have a glass of pure distilled water. So that pure distilled water represents consciousness. And then you put in droplets of dye droplets with different colors. And then when you put it into the glass of clear distilled water, then the color will change, right? From a transparent quality, it will change to something depending on what color dyes are put in, and also depending on their proportion. Okay, so these colored dyes represent the other 3 mental aggregates: feeling, perception, and intention or Saṅkhāra. All right. So we have different cittas. We have cittas that are associated with the 5 senses, and then we have cittas that are associated with the 6th sense, the mind consciousness. So when we talk about Saṅkhāra in the context of the law of paticca-samuppada, law of dependent origination, we are only referring to the Saṅkhāra that can be found in the citta associated with mind consciousness, not with the citta that is associated with the other sense consciousnesses. Okay, I will talk more about that later, but here, in the context of the law of dependent origination, the Saṅkhāra, the intention that arises in the citta that is associated with mind consciousness, is the kamma. Well, somebody just said just now, cetanā hang bhikkhave kamma vadami, right? Monks, I say that cetanā or volition is kamma. So since Saṅkhāra is something intentional, it is volitional. So whenever there is volition, kamma is created. But it depends on how that intention is expressed. If it is expressed to the body, then you call it bodily volitional formation. All right? So this is like you have a thought of you want to kill that nasty cockroach that intrudes into your kitchen space. Okay, and then you express it by whacking it. Okay, that is bodily volitional formation. It comes from the mind. Yeah, the intention of wanting to kill that cockroach comes from the mind, and then you express it, and that is bodily volitional formation. On the other hand, if you manage to refrain and restrain yourself from killing, you know you're not going to break the first precept, and then you start to curse it, curse the cockroach, you know, for intruding into your very neat and tidy kitchen space. So that is verbal volitional formation. Okay, so it is expressed verbally, so it is verbal volitional formation. On the other hand, if you manage to also restrain yourself from abusive speech, coarse speech, as part of the Noble Eightfold Path, but it only happens in your mind, you know, you didn't say anything, you didn't take anything to whack that cockroach, but then you are cursing the cockroach in your mind. That is also mental volitional formation. That's still kamma form. So all of these actually stem from the mind. And someone just said just now, mind is a foreigner of all things. Yeah, it stems from the mind, but depends on how it is expressed. If it is expressed to the body, then it's called bodily volitional formation. If it's expressed to speech, then it's called verbal volitional formations. Otherwise, if it's only inside, then it is mental volitional formation. And it is so kamma. But don't panic. You know, not all the unwholesome or nasty comments that go on in your mind will lead you to the lower realms. They are bad karma. They will give unpleasant results, whether in this lifetime or in future lifetimes, but they will not take you down to the lower realms. But there are certain very grave mental volitional formation, which occurs only in the mind, but not expressed verbally or bodily, that can lead you to the lower realms. And if you are familiar with the 10 types of duccarita, 10 causes of unwholesome actions, then you will know that there are 3 that are connected with the mind, right? That is the wrong view, and then ill will and covetousness. If you hold on to a wrong view that does not believe in the law of karma and the law of personal accountability for your actions, yeah, that can lead you to the lower realm. And then if you have a very malicious thought of wanting somebody to die, yeah, you may not actually do anything or say anything to cause the death of the person, but in your mind you wish that that person would fall dead, or that person get assassinated, or be struck by lightning. Yeah, that sort of thought is grave enough, malicious enough to give results in the lower realm, which means to say it may be a cause for you to be reborn in the lower realms. Let's not talk about the effects of that unwholesome karma in this present lifetime. That could come. Yeah, that will definitely come because it's unwholesome. So whatever unwholesome thoughts you have, even though it is not that malicious, it will still give rise to unwholesome results, unpleasant results in this very life, or maybe later, but not necessarily in the lower realms. And then thirdly is covetousness. Covetousness here is a very, very strong desire to want to possess somebody or something that belongs to somebody else. Yeah, you want to, seduce somebody's wife, for example, or somebody's husband. Yeah, that is something which is, it happens only in your mind. You have not written any love letters. You have not, done any physical actions, but it only happens in your mind. You're scheming on how to get that person. Now that itself is covetousness and unwholesome karma that can lead you to the lower realms. Okay, so only these three very grievous ones can lead you to the lower realms. All the others, and including these three, if they don't lead you to the lower realms, they can still give unpleasant results in this present life, or also in later life. Okay, any questions?
Bante, the question 2 is, just now you highlighted is a sutta that is based on the dependent origination. But how about commentary? Commentary, it means what depends on what kind of documents or something like that?
Commentary. The Pali commentaries were composed according to tradition, even during the Buddha's time. They are explanations of the words and the concepts that the Buddha used in his discourses, which are not clear in themselves. Right? So they will try to elaborate. Okay? And then later on, it was put into writing. Yeah, later on, more and more commentaries came out. So as a rule, all these commentaries that we have today, they use the word nāma-rūpa in the way that I showed just now. The nama to refer to all the four immaterial aggregates, and rupa, of course, to anything that is physical, right? But then sutta here, I mean only in the law of dependent origination, where the word nāma-rūpa is used. Yeah, in this particular context, nama refers only to the 5 elements that we saw just now. Does not include consciousness, because consciousness was already mentioned in the previous link. Okay?
Good morning, Bante. I have 2 questions. I'll start with my first question first. It pertains to the second discussion topic. Just wanted to understand what's the difference between attention and consciousness. Is there any difference? Or?
Okay. You see, when we look at the scheme of the 5 aggregates, we only have, aside from rupa, which is material, we look at the 4 immaterial aggregates. We have feelings, saññā, perception, saṅkhāra, volitional formations, and we have consciousness, right? So, anything that does not belong to feeling or perception or consciousness goes under saṅkhāra. Yeah, because besides feeling, perception, and consciousness, there are so many other things that are happening in your mind, no? Right? Initial thinking, discursive thinking, samadhi, mindfulness, clear awareness, wisdom, greed, hatred, delusion, and all these are happening in your mind. Yeah, but they are not feeling, they are not perception, they are not consciousness. So all of them come under saṅkhāra. All right. So here, in this case, we have the last 2 under nama is contact and phassa and attention, right? So attention is also one part of saṅkhāra. It's a type of saṅkhāra. If you look at that, the analogy of the glass of water, it is just another drop of dye. Consciousness is just the clear, insipid liquid there. So consciousness by itself is insipid. Consciousness cannot feel, consciousnness cannot perceive, consciousness cannot recognize, consciousness cannot think. Consciousness is just like the pure distilled water. It just has a rudimentary awareness or consciousness of an object. That's all. Yeah, all the feeling and perception and thinking and volition, everything, all these are done by the other 3 aggregates. Okay, get it? Okay, next please.
Morning, Bante.
Hello.
Bante, is it okay? Someone translate nāma-rūpa as a materiality, mentality.
Yeah, that is the commentarial understanding of mentality in the sense of the 4 mental aggregates. Visuddhimagga, yeah. That was translated by Ñāṇamoli in the Visuddhimagga.
So that is okay. It's the same as nāma-rūpa.
That is the commentarial understanding of nāma-rūpa.
But isn't it in dependent origination? This nāma-rūpa sounds like a psychophysical component of organism. It's talking about a being, ovum. Because of ignorance, then consciousness give rise to this ovum, this organism happening. So does it mean this nāma-rūpa is some kind of a being, an organism in this dependent origination itself?
Yeah, I would think so. But then we should also understand the links in the law of dependent origination as something not necessarily linear in nature. It could be simultaneous. When vijnana arises, it cannot arise by itself. Consciousness cannot arise by itself. It must arise together with the other mental factors. So at the same time, when there is vijnana, there's already nama. Right? Not? But then it's just to show you the link, one to another. But this is not a linear link. It could be a simultaneous link.
It's like two shifts of the reeds come together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just a co-arising, dependent link co-arising.
Yeah.
Nāma-rūpa.
Right.
Without that, you cannot have the other one. You must have two come together.
Exactly.
So that's why some people confuse. They thought nāma-rūpa should include consciousness, but actually it is not, isn't it? It is a consciousness giving rise to nāma-rūpa, and nāma-rūpa also giving rise to consciousness at the same time.
Yeah. Exactly. That's how it should be understood.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Bhante.
Yeah, hello.
My question is not really directly related to this discussion. It's about just now the Arahant, the question about Arahant. So in this dependent origination, when Arahant has destroyed ignorance, it means that it won't give rise to the next components, which is the volitional formations, and is in particular the volitions, right? Because just now the discussion is whether Arahant is there any cetanā in Arahant.
Actually, I will explain this in the next section, but to give you a preview of what I'm going to say, the law of dependent origination is applicable only to non-Arahants. Non-Arahants only, because it starts with avijja. Arahant will no more avijja, so it doesn't apply to an Arahant. Okay? Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. My name is Guna. I want to ask, for phassa, is there a difference between phassa of normal person and phassa of people who are enlightened, like let's say sotāpanna?
Phassa is just phassa. Phassa is just sense experience. As long as a person has all the sense organs intact, phassa will happen. You can't stop it. That's part of the ultimate suffering of existence. As long as you have the five aggregates and your organs are in good working order, you can't stop sense experience from happening. They arise and pass away from moment to moment according to circumstances. Okay? Hope that answers your question.
Yes. Can I ask two things? One is that the mind contact, I find it very difficult to grasp that one. That's one question. And then the second question is, some of the Google websites say that when a person dies, the mind and body separates. In a sense, the body decays and the mind goes on. Is there any truth to it? What happens?
Oh, did you attend my good death workshop? How to die a good death? Huh?
I haven't yet.
Haven't yet. It's already done. It's already gone. You have to wait for the videos to to be uploaded. It's too long to answer that. Okay, what was the first question? Is you say you have some difficulty understanding mind contact. What difficulty do you have?
Because mind. If it's true that the mind separates from the body, could you?
No, wait. The first one is not about separation from the body. It's about mind contact.
Could it be mind versus mind contact? Like sixth sense telepathy as well. Could that be included?
Now, what is your question, actually? I don't understand. What is it you don't understand about mind contact?
Because there's six senses, and the last one being the mind, right?
Right.
So if it's the eye, you have an external object.
Right.
And then the mind I presume is also an external object, but could a mind contact another mind, or am I just too confused?
You see, the five senses can only take their respective sense objects. The eyes can only see colors, the ears can only hear sound, and so forth, right? But the mind can take all the objects of the five senses and beyond. For example, your mind can recall memories of a childhood. Those visions that you have in your mind about your childhood, they are no longer visible to the eye, but still you can recall them. So these are the past objects. Yeah, and some people have special inborn psychic abilities. They can perceive or have a vision of things that could happen in the future, right? That is a future object. All right, and also the mind can, once the eyes have seen an object, as you know, if you study biology and so forth, the nerves at the eye organ, at the retina, will send signals to the brain, and then it will stimulate the brain, and then it will create an image, and then the brain will start to interpret that. Okay, so that is the object of the mind. The mind interprets the object that has been perceived through the eyes. All right, so that is related to the five senses. And many of these past objects that the mind think of are also come from the five senses. All right, there are some objects which don't come from the five senses. For example, concepts. You know, if you're a mathematician, you have a concept or imagination, things that are not perceived before through any of your five senses. Yeah, you can still conceive of them. Well, all right.
Thank you very much.
Questions is going back to this mental volitional formation and bodily volitional formation. Okay, for example, I kill a mosquito, but my mental intention is, what if I just shoo away this mosquito, which happened to be an Aedes mosquito, and it may just go on and bite another person. It could be my family member or my neighbor. So even though the intention is good, but I actually done the killing. So do I actually breaking the precept? Just back to this very basic question, Bhante.
Of course, yes. You cannot bargain with karma.
So even though the intention is maybe for the greater good of preventing this risk of like mosquito carrying the viruses, dangerous viruses, which could like bring dengue or other sicknesses.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's why the Buddha talks about dark and bright karma. Yeah, you do dark and bright karma, like what you said just now. This scenario of killing a mosquito in order for the greater good, that is dark and bright karma. So you will reap the results of dark and bright karma. On the one hand, it's dark because it's killing. On the other hand, you're trying to save people. All right. So next time, in the course of your sojourn in Saṅkhāra, you will meet with pleasant and unpleasant experiences. Now, that's why our journey in life is never smooth. It's always ups and downs because we have done dark and bright karma before.
Thanks, Bhante.
Good morning, Bhante. I'd like to get some clarification here. From what you have spoken, there were some words that struck me. The words were called linear versus simultaneously. So my question is this, regarding the law of dependent origination, there are components in there. So do they arise on a linear basis, that means subsequent arising? Or do all the components arise in a simultaneous manner in reality?
Both. Sometimes you can see them as both. In fact, in the suttas, in the Abhidhamma, there's a long explanation of how all these can be interpreted in terms of a single moment. Okay. Yet in the suttas, there are also interpretations showing that there is a three-life process: past life, present life, and future life. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next, please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Bhante. So Bhante, regarding the dependent origination link, maybe in respect to the previous question by Brother War, I don't know whether it's the same on this matter. We understand from this dependent here is that Saṅkhāra also can mean kamma. But can we also say that kamma is also formed from the link under nāma-rūpa?
No, in the 12 links of the dependent origination, there are a few instances of kamma being mentioned. The second link is Saṅkhāra, right? That is kamma. And then the next one will be after Vedana, after feeling, then you have craving. Craving is also kamma. Then you have upadana, clinging. That is also karma. Then you have bhava, becoming. That is also karma. So in the law of dependent origination, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 links that refer to karma.
In respect of nāma-rūpa, since there is an ingredient of cetanā, is it not considered as karma itself?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I don't know. I don't think I can answer that. In the Abhidhamma, it seems that all cittas contain intention. Even when you are dreaming, there is intention, you know. But the intention is so weak that it's insignificant. It won't cause any significant karmic results. All right. So I also question that idea of having intention in all cittas, because experientially, we know that all the 5 sense experiences can happen without intention. For instance, if your nose is in good working order, somebody comes into the room with some durians, you can't help but smell it, right? You can't help, but you cannot say, I don't want to smell. If you, as a loud sound, an explosion, and your ears are in good working condition, you cannot say, I don't want to hear. It's unintentional. So our 5 senses don't have the consciousness that is associated with our 5 sense experiences, not necessarily accompanied by intention. Okay?
Okay. Sadhu Bante.
You know, we tend to have reoccurring memories, like when we're doing something and some memory is just right. How is that triggered? Because we say there's object, you know, but this is memory. So how memory is triggered?
Everything is a product of cause and condition. So the condition is that you had this experience before in the past. That is the condition, right? The cause is probably this experience that you had was traumatic. Either it was traumatic or it was something which was desirable and you like it, or something which was significant and deeply embedded in your subconscious. And so when conditions are there, they could just arise. If your mindfulness and insight is not strong enough, you will not be able to see the cause and condition behind the arising of memories. So I would say that memories come under the second mental aggregate of saññā. Right? Saññā is unintentional memory. Mindfulness is intentional memory. So whatever that arises in you, a past memory that just pops up, that is not karmic. It is a resultant. But how you respond or react to that memory, with aversion or with attachment, that will constitute karma. Okay?
Yeah, so if my reaction is, I want to stop it.
Why? Don't like it, right? You don't like it, right? If you don't like it and you want to stop it, that's already aversion. That's already karma.
So the only thing to solve it is to just let it go.
Yeah, that's what I teach you, you know. Free and easy, touch and go. Whatever arises, you just notice it and just leave it and come back to your senses.
But we learn about also the vipassana, right? Try to find the cause and condition.
Yeah, you can really do that when your mind becomes composed. If there's not enough composure, you try to do that, you go around in circles trying to think out how to solve it.
And that must be done during the meditation when you're sitting.
I'll be covering this in the course of guided meditation.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, Bhante.
Yes.
So there is some very basic question. It's about contact, it's about consciousness.
Okay.
So for the eye consciousness, still can understand, because there's an organ that is your eye, the sense base, sight as an object, and then eye consciousness you can understand. But when it comes to the mind consciousness, what is the object of the mind consciousness?
I just explained it just now. I said it could be concepts, it could be memories, it could be visions of past events based on what the five senses had perceived. Even if you recognize something, after you've seen it, that is really a mental object. Initially, the eyes perceive that object, but once it gets in the brain, then the mind will start to use that object and think about it.
Okay, thank you. Now the next thing is about the consciousness in the four aggregates. Sometimes it's been described as knowing. Is this consciousness the same as the eye consciousness?
Which four senses are you talking about?
The four aggregates. The feeling, the volition, that consciousness, but sometimes it's been described as knowing.
Yeah, actually consciousness is knowing, right? You're conscious of something, you know something, you're aware of something, you can use so many words for it. But in our Buddhist terminology, we try to not use too many words and we confine it to just consciousness as a technical term for vijnana.
So this consciousness, is it the same as the eye consciousness?
Yes.
Sorry, is it the same as a mind consciousness?
Yes. So in the fifth aggregate of consciousness, vijnana, we have 6 types of consciousnesses. Eye, ear, nose, and so forth. All right, plus the mind consciousness.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante, if a person is in coma, how does phassa work? He cannot see, he cannot speak, but the life faculty is there. Does this person have mental formation in the mind in terms of law of independence?
The law of independence?
Of origin?
Of dependent origination. Oh, okay. Okay, when a person is in coma, it seems that it appears now from the medical instruments that the 5 senses are no longer operating. All right? And in some cases, some people say that even the brain is no longer functioning. Right? But then these people, somehow, they are resuscitated. Then they come back to life and they say, at that time, when he was supposed to be brain dead and physically dead, clinically dead, the mind was still very conscious and he could even see his own body on the operating theater. He could see people around and he could be traveling here and there. Okay?
Are they in Bhavanga?
No, this is not Bhavanga. Bhavanga is like you don't know anything, you are already fast asleep without any dreams. This one is very, very fully conscious. They can come back and tell the story. If you're interested, there's one clip that I extracted from a documentary where a brain scientist who believed that the mind is the brain, he himself got some stroke or something like that in the brain, and then he was declared, brain dead. But somehow he came back. He came back and he explained that at that time he had very vivid experiences, and after that, when he came back and he regained his normal consciousness, then it took some time, of course, to get back to the normal consciousness. He looked at all the evidence of brain activity at the time, all dead now. Then he came to the conclusion that the mind cannot be the brain because my mind was still there when the brain is no longer functioning. Okay? All right. Okay, I think we cannot go anymore. I think you better watch my YouTube videos on Good Death Workshop where we talk a lot about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.